Welcome everyone to a very scrambled Couch Potato Diary today. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in. Toxic. When I said earlier this week that, all right, this is kind of what the plan is, but we'll see what breaking news comes out. This was not the breaking news I had in mind. So, and especially when that Blue Jays trade happened earlier today, thought we might be doing a Blue Jays breaking news stream. But instead, we are doing a breaking news one on the big news out of the Ultimate Fighting Championship today, as the UFC 311 main event has changed. Instead of Arman Tsarukyan getting the opportunity at the championship, it is now Islam Makhachev against Reinato Moicano. Just a gigantic change to this card, and a big surprise coming out of all of it. So changes up kind of what we were looking at doing today, obviously, and changes up the previews and all of that. So we are going to dive right in. First, talk about the news, how it affects everyone, and then we'll get into the fight preview. Also, we got some AEW talk, some WWE talk as well, and the NFL playoffs are this weekend. So we'll be talking about each and every one of those games and breaking it all down. But yeah, if you want to react in the chat, let me know whatever you're thinking about this fight and about these changes, because it's a wild one here today. As always, we're presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca. Got this. We got the sweater back there. Here, let's get a better light on that. Oh, that's way too bright on that. But still, you can kind of see what we're going for there. Real nice sweater. It's a nice blue. Now that's too dark. I'm trying to do production on the fly for those of you listening. Apologies for that. But, all right, let's get into it. Giant changes. UFC 311. Let's break it all down. Shall we? So, UFC 311 has been altered, I would say, substantially, as the main event is now changed. Islam Makhachev will now be defending the UFC's Lightweight Championship against Reinato Moicano instead of Arman Tsarukyan. Dana White putting out a selfie video about 20 minutes ago saying that the fight has changed. Arman he can't do it. He's got a back problem. Something's come up. And so that fight is off, and instead, Reinato Moicano jumps into this one. Dana White saying that Moicano made championship weight to be ready for this type of an event as the backup. Islam Makhachev said, I'm the champion. I fight whoever you put in front of me. And so that is what the Ultimate Fighting Championship is going with. So just kind of reacting to the news as it comes in right now. Apparently this is now, I'm sure another fight is going to be moved up into the pay-per-view portion of things, just not exactly certain which one that's going to be as we're recording this here live right now. But let's talk about what this means for all the parties involved. Let's start with Arman Tsarukyan. This is obviously a devastating blow, and this was the opportunity that he has been really working his way up towards, and he was not a substantial underdog, but he was certainly not favored in this particular bout. But he's on quite a roll right now. He gets the opportunity against Charles Oliveira, and he takes full advantage of it. He's won 4 fights in a row. He's finished 2 of them. He's won 9 of his last 10. Looking to avenge one of the losses that he's had in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, a loss to Islam Makhachev in his UFC debut. So this sucks for him. There's no way around it. This is a pretty tough one to take, and the UFC does not take kindly to these sorts of things, and you would suggest that would be irrational to do given an injury, but they get pretty pissy about this sort of a thing. So I hope for his sake the company doesn't hold this against him. I think that we will learn in the coming hours, days, weeks, maybe even months, how long this back injury was a problem for him, and how long he was kind of sitting on this and waiting to see, okay, maybe it'll get better today, maybe it'll get better today, maybe it'll get better today, and it just kept not getting better, and that kept being a problem. So it's understandable if he went that route, right? It's this biggest fight of his career, biggest opportunity of his career. He is not a gigantic name. I mean, it's it's a lot of letters, but he is not a gigantic name when it comes to the Ultimate Fighting Championship and being a big draw. So these opportunities do not come around all that often for him. So you are hoping, again, for his sake, that he still gets the next title opportunity here against either Makhachev or against Renato Moicano. And who knows, like maybe this is something that popped up fight week. Maybe it was that he slipped and fell in a sauna or something along those lines. But the back problem, just too much for him to overcome. So for him, what is fair is that he would get the next title opportunity. But we'll see. We will see what comes now from this, as this is, again, a really, really tough spot for him to be in, and a really difficult situation all the way around. But tough situation for him makes it a very good situation for Renato Moicano as he jumps into a title fight. Dana White saying, like, this is a guy who has been all-action fighter and pushes for these sorts of opportunities. He's himself on a roll. He's won 6 of his last 7, coming off of just a devastating TKO win over Benoit Saint-Denis in Benoit Saint-Denis' home country out in France back in September. It's back-to-back wins. It's back-to-back knockout wins, the first 2 knockout victories of his career. At 35 years old, he is having some of the best fights of his career now. And it would just seem, we'll talk about this a little bit later when we get into the more in-depth previews, but it would just seem like he would get on a roll and he would just hit a wall. And he would get on a roll and he would just hit a wall. And he would just not be able to get over that hump. But now it seems like he has. And opportunity has presented itself to Moicano. I don't think if he would have gone out and been successful against a Beneil Dariush that this opportunity would arise for him. But so he's taking advantage of someone else's misfortune and is jumping on it. So fantastic work by him to be able to jump on this and really give himself an opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime chance here against Islam Makhachev. For Makhachev, we'll get into the more specific breakdown here in just a second. Not a whole lot changes for him. He goes from a fight where he was heavily favored to a fight where he was heavily favored. I would hope, also back on the Moicano part, I would hope that he is getting a bit of a pay raise. Hope that wet in the beak a little bit to go out there and fight in a championship bout now instead of just another fight on an undercard. So you're hoping that he gets taken care of a little bit there. And for Makhachev, like, he could very easily be like, yeah, I didn't train for this guy. Give me more money. Let's go. I would assume that there is a bit of a pay raise for helping the company out, because he could just be like, yeah, beat it. You guys got a championship fight on here. Roll with that one instead. Now, one would assume that you wouldn't want to make the trek from where he lives to LA just to sit around and do nothing. So, there's negotiations that would go on and stuff like that. But this doesn't change a whole lot for him. Quality of opponent, style of opponent is a little bit different, but I don't think it really alters a whole lot for him. The one that I'm wondering about in this all is Beneil Dariush, as he was set for a pretty important fight against Moicano coming up on Saturday, and at last I have checked, it doesn't look like there is a fight coming for him. He made weight today, I believe, so he would get his show money. You would assume that has not necessarily been something that's been locked in by the UFC before, but you're hoping that he gets kind of taken care of now, and this was a huge fight for him. I talked with Aaron Bronstetter on Sportsnet 960 out here in Calgary yesterday, talking about the importance of this fight for Beneil Dariush. If he had an opportunity to fight for a championship, he was going to have to start with a win in this fight, and that ended up not happening. And because Renato Moicano now jumps out of that fight and into the main event. Deeds, once again, subscribing. Thank you very much, Deeds. I greatly appreciate that here on Twitch. The breaking news is that, what is breaking apparently is Arman Tsarukyan's back, as he is out for the UFC 311 main event. Back injury forces him to pull out. Renato Moicano now jumps in to the UFC Championship picture, as he will get his bout against Islam Makhachev in the main event at UFC 311. So some big changes to the card happening out here today. And honestly, it's Twitch gods smiling on me. I was hoping to do this at 10 o'clock today, and just, wanted to watch this and didn't get a chance to do this, and things moving slowly, and you guys know how I am. So I was like, yeah, I'll just push this to noon. We'll push it to noon, and it'll be fine. And then all this news breaks at like 11:40, which is probably, given the length that these shows tend to go, that is probably exactly when we would have stopped streaming. And all this news comes down. So, not that there's a great situation in all of this, but pushing this one back a little bit certainly helped us out here today. So, what does this mean for UFC 311 now? Let's get into the fight preview, shall we? One of my favorite videos. This is the UFC 311 full fight preview here on Couch Potato Diary. Full main card preview, I will say. We did say the other day that there were a couple of fighters to watch on the undercard. So do want to give them their flowers here before we get rolling with our main card preview. Again, give me your thoughts in the chat. Let me know what you guys think of all of this. But first one that we want to look at is in the heavyweight division. Jailton Almeida taking on Sergey Spivak. These are, like I said before, a couple of fighters who really need things to kind of go their way. You have Almeida, who is 33 years old. He's going to be entering the octagon tomorrow with a record of 21-3. His most recent loss came against Curtis Blades back at UFC 299. He recovered from that with a first-round submission victory over Alexander Romanov back in Jersey in June of 2024. He is taking on Sergey Spivak, out of 29 years old, out of Moldova. The Polar Bear is 17-4 in his career, coming off of a submission win over Marcin Tybura back at the UFC on ESPN. That fight was the main event there. Not the most inspiring choice for main event. That was one where we talked about it. I think it was Brett Okamoto who said on Twitter, some fight cards have main events and other fight cards just have fights that go on last. And that was certainly that for Spivak. But these are two guys who record-wise, this should be a big fight. 21-3 for Almeida. Spivak 17-4 going into this one. They've both had losses to high-level guys. Almeida just the one, I guess, to Curtis Blades. Spivak with the loss to Cyril Gane and Tom Aspinall, and Marcin Tybura. Walt Harris, the other one, rounding out the loss column there for Spivak. But neither guy has been all that okay, here is this dude. Almeida maybe with that type of a performance, submitting Romanov back in June, like I said, at UFC 302. I think he gets the win here. Spivak just kind of feels like one from a generation gone by, so to speak. So I feel like this is a Jailton Almeida victory in this particular bout. Also, for our fighters to watch here, we have Aylin Perez having won 6 of her last 7, taking on Carol Rosa in the early prelims, which, at this point, there isn't a whole lot different there. For people in the States, one's on FX, one's on Disney, one's on ESPN Plus, so at this point, it's not like it used to be where the fights were on Facebook and then they weren't and stuff like that. But anyway, for Aylin Perez, she is 30 years old, out of Argentina. She comes in with a record of 11-2, taking on Carol Rosa out of Brazil, who steps into the cage with a record of 18-6. She has alternated win-loss for a while. But the loss is coming against some pretty good competition in Sarah McMahon, Norma Dumont, and Irene Aldana, while Perez has not lost since her UFC debut back in 2022. Since then, 3 decision wins and then a submission victory to round out her 2024 calendar. I think that this is an exciting prospect, and I feel like she is maybe getting a little bit of not quite a fair shake when it comes to the odds. And again, I say prospect, 30 years old. It is time to kind of get this thing going. This will be, I think, probably the biggest step up in competition for her. Carol Rosa, like we said, has lost a few, but it's to people who are kind of upper echelon-ish. Not the tippity top like we see sometimes with these, but A step above, for sure. Anytime she takes a step up in class, she comes up a little bit short. The question is Aylin Perez at that level? I don't necessarily think she is, but I do think that she is capable of pulling off an upset here. So that's one that we might do a bit of a sprinkle on when it comes to a bit of an underdog pick. But I do think that she has a very good opportunity here to pull off a bit of an upset. And then we get to Peyton Talbot, another fighter to watch. He will be on the main event for the prelims, I guess you could say, as the kid out of Reno, Nevada, will be taking on Rani Barcelos, who is 37 years old, out of Brazil. It has not gone well for Barcelos lately. Is coming off of a win in his last bout back in February, but was winless in 2023, and overall has lost 4 of his last 6. Peyton Talbot, losses, never heard of him. 9-0 in his professional career. Now, he has fought exactly one person with a Wikipedia page. That was Cameron Simon back at UFC on ESPN in March of 2023. But a very interesting prospect here. Back-to-back knockout wins following a submission win. So 3-0 in the UFC, 3 finishes. The most recent one going in just 19 seconds. I think last I saw it was basically like -1 or 1100 or something like that. So people figuring that this is going to be another kind of run-through fight. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. I think he wins, but I think Barcelos keeps this one a little bit closer than a 19-second blow-through. But an interesting test for Peyton Talbot anyway, as they roll through on the prelims. In the chat, Deeds. So Jays get straw and international money. Sasaki, maybe? Toxic beat me to that. Yes, we were kind of wondering that what might be the breaking news stream that we do here this week, but not the case so far anyway. We'll keep an eye on the baseball news as we roll on. But now it is time to run through the main card as it is now. Recording this at 12:24 p.m. Mountain Time on Friday, January the 17th. We start in the middleweight division as it is Kevin Holland against Reinier de Ridder. Kevin Holland, 32 years old, out of Riverside, California. It's a hard 32, though, in the fight game. He has 39 bouts on the resume, 26 wins, 12 losses, 22 of the wins have been finishes. Also has won no contest, coming off of a knockout loss back at UFC 307 against Roman Dolidze. It's been a bit of a tough go here for Kevin Holland. He's lost 3 of his last 4, with losses to Jack Della Maddalena, Michael Page, and Roman Dolidze. While de Ridder is 34 years old, out of the Netherlands, coming into this one with an 18-2 record. He's won back-to-back fights, with the most recent one coming in November against Gerald Meerschaert. This is, I think, the biggest step up in competition for him. It was his UFC debut in his last one, coming from ONE and UAE Warriors. So, an interesting prospect here, the former middleweight champion, former light heavyweight champion in ONE, taking on Kevin Holland, who has been very good at introducing fighters to the ultimate proving ground in the UFC with the fight against Michael Venom Page back at UFC 299. I just feel like it started to fall off a little bit too much for Kevin Holland. He is still a dangerous fighter and still someone who you hate to put gatekeeper on a guy, but at 32 years old, he is kind of the how good are you really test. If you can beat him, then you are deserving of fighters in and around the top 15, and if not, then there is some work to do. I think de Ridder is worthy of a top 15 part. He is a black belt in judo. He has a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. If he can take this one down, I think he's going to have a very good opportunity against Kevin Holland, who's only been submitted 3 times in his career. The last one coming against Khamzat Chimaev back at UFC 279 in 2022 when all of that madness went down. Before that, you have to go all the way back to a Brendan Allen fight in 2019. So not the easiest guy to stop, but I think de Ridder, he has the tool set to go out and really get that job done. We go into the light heavyweight division now as Jiri Prochazka takes on Jamahal Hill in a very intriguing fight in the light heavyweight division. Prochazka, 32 years old, out of Czechoslovakia, training at Extreme Couture. He is 35-1 in his UFC career. 30 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw. 26 wins by knockout, another 3 by submission, with 3 of his 5 losses coming by way of knockout. One of those is against Alex Pereira, as he lost to the reigning and defending UFC light heavyweight champion the last time he stepped into the octagon back at UFC 303, and his last two losses have come to Alex Pereira, his only two losses in the UFC. Taking on Jamahal Hill, who is 33 years old, born in Chicago. He stands 6'4", training at Black Lion Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, 12-2 with one no contest in his career, 7 wins by way of knockout, both losses he has been knocked out in, including a fight against Alex Pereira back at UFC 300. The former light heavyweight champion had to vacate his title due to an Achilles injury. He then tried to fight, lost, ending a 4-fight winning streak. The Dana White Contender Series alumni has been in the pro ranks since 2017. I feel like Jamahal Hill is kind of built perfectly to beat Jiri Prochazka. A big part of Prochazka's game is he can withstand a lot of pressure, he can withstand a lot of punishment, and then he can come out and really put it on you. The thing is, though, Jamahal Hill dishes out an absurd amount of punishment and an absurd amount of damage, and the pace that I think he is going to be able to put on is going to probably be, I think, a bit too much for Prochazka to handle. The one thing about Prochazka is that it is a unique style, we will say. And so that gives him a bit of an opportunity against 33-year-old Jamahal Hill, who, very good fighter. Again, former champion, has seen a lot, but this is still just his, 16th professional fight? And so when you're dealing with someone who's a little unorthodox, that can maybe throw you off a little bit. So Prochazka has to hope that he can kind of weird his way to a win. But I just feel like the power of Hill is going to be able to get him across the finish line and get him a victory in this fight. I think he probably stops this one. Prochazka can take a ton of damage, so I don't know if I would invest in that necessarily, but I do think that Hill has the opportunity to put just too much damage on Prochazka for him to come back from. Also, this is just a 3-round fight, so that kind of rope-a-dope technique, you can do that for 1 round and then you have to win the next 2. I just don't think it works in a 3-round fight coming from Prochazka, who's a little bit more accustomed to the championship rounds and things of that nature. So we will see what comes from that particular bout. But I do think Jamahal Hill, the power that he has, he's also patient. Like when he smells blood, it's go time. But he is quite patient out there as a fighter, and so I think that is going to lead him into a couple of very big opportunities and give him a chance to not fall into the trap that Prochazka has dragged a few fighters into before. So I think Jamahal Hill ends up getting the win in that fight. We now go to the co-main event of the evening. It is for the Bantamweight Championship of the World, as Merab Dvalishvili takes on Umar Nurmagomedov. Dvalishvili is 34 years old, standing at 5'6", born in Georgia, not the state. He trains at Serra-Longo Fight Team, 18-4 for the career, with 3 wins by knockout, 1 by submission. He has 1 submission loss on his resume. His most recent bout got him a whole lot of gold, as he beat Sean O'Malley at UFC 306 to win the Bantamweight Championship and continue on an 11-fight win streak. 10 of those are by decision, but along with O'Malley, he has beat a who's who in this division. Henry Cejudo, Petr Yan, Jose Aldo, Marlon Moraes, Cody Stamann, and John Dodson. He's been in the UFC since 2017, where he lost his first 2 fights, and he's now won 11 in a row. He has been a pro since 2014, and I always love these stories. He started his career 1-2. He's now 18-4. Don't give up, kids. Excellent work there from Merab. He is taking on Umar Nurmagomedov, who comes into this one as a favorite, as the challenger, because he has yet to taste defeat in his 29 years on this planet, and a few of those spent as a professional, fighting since 2016. We are now in 2025. He is 18-0. 2 wins by knockout, 7 of those coming by way of submission. His last 2 wins have been by decision, most recently a victory over Corey Sandhagen. He does not necessarily have the resume of someone who you would think would be a challenger for a championship in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. But he has been so dominant and so controlling in those wins that he has the skill set that has led a lot of people to believe that he is going to give Merab problems here on Saturday night. I think this is a really intriguing fight. I think it is a little disrespectful to Merab that he is such a clear underdog in this bout. I think that they both kind of cancel off a lot of what they can do. I do think that the wrestling for Merab might actually be a little bit better than Umar's is, and I think that he's going to be able to control a lot of this. The stand-up, I think Umar has the advantage there, but we will see. I think it's going to be a very, very interesting chess match, and I just think, yes, Umar has the 5-round experience, but he doesn't have it against Merab here. And I think Merab, having been through this, having fought all of those fighters, having all of that experience, I do think Umar holds a championship at some point, but I don't think it is going to be this weekend. I think Merab pulls off the upset, and I think that he is going to be able to hold on to his championship. So I think Merab outpoints Umar and picks up the victory here this weekend, holding on to the bantamweight title. And now we get to the fight that we didn't think we'd have to break down. It is the UFC 311 main event that changed less than a day, or just over 24 hours, I guess, before the fight would actually step into the cage, as Islam Makhachev goes up against Renato Moicano for the lightweight title. Makhachev is 33 years old, 5'10" with a 70-inch reach, born in Russia. He now trains at AKA. 26-1, 5 wins by knockout, 12 wins by submission, his only loss coming by way of knockout. His most recent win was a submission victory over Dustin Poirier at UFC 302, his third UFC Lightweight Championship defense. He's on a 14-fight winning streak with 9 finishes in that time. Just 1 decision since 2019. 15-1 in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. He's a pro since 2010. Stepping into this bout where Tsarukyan was supposed to be is Renato Moicano, 35 years old, born in Brasilia, Brazil. He trains at American Top Team, 25-1, 2 wins by knockout, 10 wins by submission, 8 decision wins on the resume. Then 3 losses by knockout, another 1 by submission. His most recent bout might be his best, a dominant performance over Benoit Saint-Denis at UFC Fight Night back in September. It is back-to-back wins, and as I said before, for the first time in his career, 2 knockout wins for him. He's won 6 of his last 7. He's been in the UFC since 2014 and is 12-5 in the octagon. He is a former interim featherweight champion in Jungle Fight. I think this is a very intriguing fight. Moicano comes into this one, like I said, he's won a couple fights in a row, he's won 6 of his last 7, and it just seemed like every time he was getting close to that opportunity, something would get in his way. A lot of times it was him, and at 35, it felt like this was a big weekend for him going up against Beneil Dariush, who really needed this fight. Moicano, a win there, maybe you're a win away, and maybe in Q4 of 2025, you get a title opportunity, or early in 2026. Instead now, he is stepping in for an injured Arman Tsarukyan. So, how do these guys actually match up? I think one of the interesting things to look at in a Makhachev-Tsarukyan fight is the takedown defense for Arman. If he could have kept this fight standing, then I think that his stand-up would have been better than Islam's, and that would have given him a bit of an edge. I think Moicano is a better stand-up fighter than Tsarukyan is. I don't think he has the power that would have let him put this one away. And so, like, again, there's that puncher's chance, but the hope of a flash one-shot, shock-the-world knockout, I don't think is there as much for a Moicano as it is for a Tsarukyan. And so now it gets to, can he keep the fight standing? Because I still think, even without the one-punch knockout power, Moicano has the edge over Islam when it is in the stand-up. I do think that he has that advantage. It comes down to the takedown defense. I don't think Moicano, he is just not physically, I understand they're the same weight. Physically, they don't look the same, right? And so I don't think that he will be physically strong enough to stop the takedowns of Islam Makhachev. If he is able to keep this fight standing, he has a very real chance of pulling off another huge upset in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I just don't know if he's going to be able to do it. Now, I will say, if this fight goes to the ground, this isn't 2005 anymore, where it's, oh, you just don't want to deal with this guy on the ground at all. Like, his work off of his back, very dangerous. Don't even want to go into that world. That's not this anymore. Guys have gotten so good in top control that there's like 2 or 3 guys in the world that you don't want to deal with off their back, and Moicano just isn't one of those guys. I will say, though, he is a very good grappler. The speed and technique that he was able to show in the grappling department against Benoit Saint Denis was devastating. And just transitioning from taking the back, taking them out, moving into this position, all while landing just violent ground and pound. So that this is not going to be someone who is just going to lay there and allow Islam Makhachev to bludgeon them in the middle of the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles, California. This is going to be someone who is going to be squirmy and is going to be making Makhachev work. So I think that is going to create a lot of interesting scramble situations. He has to basically make this fight seem crazy if he is going to win this fight. He has to be, the second he gets taken down, it's movement, and it's going, and it's whatever. He cannot just lay there and hope that he can, maybe slide an underhook or something like that. It has to be scrambles, and it has to be a lot of chaos to try to get it back to the feet. And when it's on the feet, it has to be go time. I thought he set up his takedowns very effectively in the Benoit Saint Denis fight. Had a nice little inside leg kick, a jab, and then a takedown. So you're just messing with the eye level, right? It's like, we'll be talking about baseball here in a second, but it is when you mess with the eye level of a hitter, where you go curveball low and away, and then try to get them chasing with the high heat. It's the same thing, where you get them thinking low, then you get them thinking high, and then it's back low again with the takedown. He was very good at that, and from there, he was able to really put a hurt on Benoit Saint Denis. I wouldn't be surprised if Moicano tries to go for a takedown at some point and initiate that sort of a situation there. It might be a little bit risky, because if you don't get it, it's on the fence, Makhachev can turn him, and then it's ba-boom, and then you're probably spending a full round on your ass. But I do think that it would be something that Makhachev would not be necessarily anticipating, and it could be something to kind of catch him off guard. But I do think the longer this fight stays standing, the better it is for Moicano. I just think he might try to mess with him a little bit in that way. Overall, I do think Makhachev gets the job done. I do think it will be a finish. I don't think the judges will be required for this one. So I have Islam Makhachev winning by some form of finish inside the distance. I had it lined up for it, and we were going to do a today's ticket on this one, but we will see as the lines adjusting now on the fly for this bout. We're already in the combat sports portion of this, so may as well keep rolling into the world of professional wrestling. AEW Dynamite had a unique look that we said they kind of needed. How did they pull it off? Let's talk about it here. AEW Dynamite. Was going to say UFC. That's not the case. AEW Dynamite going down from a bit of a unique setup out in Cincinnati for Maximum Carnage. That's what the title of this one was. And like I said, first thing first, this did not feel like a big show from the arena, but it was unique. And that is something we talked about this on the preview show. What does AEW need to do now? This is the Eric Bischoff thing, and I know that he can get a little flack sometimes, but one of the good things that I think he has suggested for a lot of business owners is better than, equal than, less than. Different than, better than, less than. And different than is, what does this look like? Well, what does the feel of it? Well, WWE, highly produced. Netflix, big lights, all these different things, but it kind of, because of the pacing and everything, kind of took you out of the show. Well, this, all right, we can't compete with Netflix and the production of the WWE right now, so let's make it look different. And it certainly was that. The ramp going right up to the ring. The camera being in a spot where you see the announcers the whole time. It's those little things that just make it look a little bit different and make it feel like an alternative for AEW. I think that's what they have to do right now, especially with ticket sales being down. This is the way that I think you go about it if you are All Elite Wrestling. They start off with Brian Cage against Kenny Omega, a strong TV match. This wasn't, no one's changing their match of the year rankings or anything like that, but it was a good match. It gets Kenny Omega on TV and kind of gets him rolling in this. It made Cage, I think, feel pretty strong, and it advanced the feud with the Callis family. Those are all the beats that it needed to hit, it hit. It was a good match. You make Cage feel big, which is one of the things we talked about. These guys need to feel like stars. And so it makes him feel like that going into this next little era here for AEW. They go to the New York Minute with Chris Jericho. It's getting more entertaining. It's still not great, though. The Jericho multiverse, whatever it's being called there. Ricochet comes out. I love this new character from him. The look of it, the feel of it is so different. He feels so serious and just so different in one little swoop. Like, there is like major serial killer vibes going on with that. I think they have done just a chef's kiss, brilliant job of changing the perception of Ricochet very, very quickly. And you forget all about mid-card or whatever guy. He is now a different character because he can't do physically all the stuff that made him him. And also, he was so revolutionary in what he did that a lot of guys took what he did and tried to elevate it now. And so he is not one of one anymore. He has to have a different feel in a different way, and this was a very good way of going about it. And then Swerve's response is perfect. Made him feel like a badass too. So that one hit the beat that it absolutely needed to. And then I really like the Mercedes Mone vignette. That is the type of promo they should be getting with her. The in-ring with the mic in her hand thing, that has not really been clicking in the way that it used to. And it's always been a little clunky with her, but just the swagger and the attitude that she had kind of carried you through it. She kind of lost some of that luster, and so that part is gone. So reestablish that now with her doing media, her buying expensive things, and all of that. The in-ring has been very good. She had a fantastic second half of 2024, and now rounding out the character in this way, I thought was really, really, really smart. It's taken a while, but they are starting to really hit their stride with this Mercedes Mone character. And then we get to the MJF Jeff Jarrett segment, which I thought was good, not great. They're both fine. I mean, they're both good on the microphone. MJF is great, probably the best in the business, and Jeff Jarrett has always been fine. I don't think he's ever been as good as he thinks he is, but he has always been good. The thing that kind of got me, and I think the thing that kind of lost a lot of people here, because they had, like, Jeff Jarrett has done an excellent job of getting this sympathy and building himself up as this veteran going for one last shot here, and they've done a really good job with that. But then in the promo thing, Jeff Jarrett has the line, "I was you before you, and I was better than you at it." And it was at that point the whole crowd was like, "Look, man, we're trying here, but come on, no one here believes that." And that has always been the thing with Jeff Jarrett's career. If Jeff Jarrett, like, he was a very good, like, U.S. title, Intercontinental title level guy who, yeah, if you wanted to elevate him and give him a title thing every now and then to mix things up a little bit, perfectly fine. But it was just, he was put into a position in WCW where he was the chosen one. And it's the line from the WCW Rise and Fall DVD where it was, broke 1,000 guitars and never drew a dime. That was him, right? Like, he is not face of the company guy. So then he creates his own company and he's the king of the mountain and all of that. And it was too much of him. And so it was that moment where it was like, oh, we remember all of those things now and we don't like it. And now we feel less sympathy for you going for your 13th World Heavyweight Championship, and like 4 of those we were okay with you having. So it felt like it was that line that was just, it was the perfect encapsulation of Jeff Jarrett's career. It's like, man, we'll go with you to a point, but then you always take it just a little bit further and put yourself in a tier that you ain't in, and now you've lost all of us there. It was still good, right? Like, there's still talented people on the mic, and then the Owens stuff happens. And obviously this is a part of the Jeff Jarrett story, right? Like, at the incredibly tragic pay-per-view, Jeff is the first one on the screen right after it happens. They were teammates and they were tied together at the time that all of that happened. And so there is always going to be this association. And it seems like legitimately, like the best friends things was legitimate, right? Like that feels real. So it is a part of Jeff Jarrett's story. And it was a very big part of Jeff Jarrett having this kind of resurgence here in mid-2024 and building up to where they are now, where they're making a bit of a run with this guy, where he's cutting the promo and you have this sympathy for him as Owen is his best friend, and you have this tragedy happen, and now what better way to kind of tie everything together in him competing in the Owen Hart and winning this thing that is so closely associated with someone who he was so closely associated with. So it is a perfect tie, but it is a very fine balance that you have to walk. And I feel like AEW has kind of lost the benefit of the doubt, given how they handled Jay Briscoe, with Jericho bringing him up constantly in the Mark Briscoe, Chris Jericho Ring of Honor title feud, and then Jericho winning it after all of that. And so I kind of feel like AEW probably needed to take about 6 months off from mentioning deceased people in their storylines. That, it bugged me. And MJF is always going to be one who goes a step too far, and there's always those sorts of things, and that is always just a part of him. But this is something that is still such a big thing. Like, it was such a tragedy when it happened, and it is always this thing that hangs over all of wrestling, really. And so now, to be calling on that as part of this storyline, like, that part feels untouchable to me. And maybe this is just me being the snowflake whatever guy, but I just feel like you can do MJF against Jeff Jarrett very easily without having to invoke Owen every single week in this thing. And so if this was a one-off, it was a line in a promo, fine, I will get over it. If this ends up being the real crux of this storyline, I hate that. And so overall, like I said, I think it's an interesting feud. I do think they need to get away from the Owen stuff. That simply cannot be trivialized just for the sake of a storyline, just so that a heel who doesn't need to use that kind of stuff anyway can get a little bit more heel heat with the crowd in a feud with a legendary performer. Like, it doesn't need it, so you don't need to go there. And you've proven in the past you're kind of shitty at going there when you do. So I really hope that is not a thing that they continue to dive into. Moving away from that, I like how they spun off the different feuds from the men's casino battle royal gauntlet thingy. They they go from one guy to the other, to the other, to the other, and they all have legitimate beef with each other. And so AEW, they are pretty good at, these guys are all associated with this, and they got a bunch of different things going on, and so at any different time, you can have a rivalry with something. The problem is they're not awesome at finishing those, or explaining them later, or all of it, and it's just, oh, well, these guys had a history a year and a half ago, oh my god, and they're back now. So that part needs to tighten up a little bit, but I do like how they used this big thing to kind of connect a lot of dots and really set themselves up here for the first part of 2025. The one I didn't like was Roddy and Jay White. Roderick Strong, you're just still trying to get him over as a babyface a little bit, and Jay White is a babyface, we think. They've both been bordering on tweener stuff, but Jay White is fully in the babyface thing now, so don't confuse it. Just go with that. White then calls out Wheeler Yuta. That works perfectly. Roll with that one. Totally fine. We go into the women's casino gauntlet. You start off with Jamie Hayter and Chris Statlander. Good action right away. Megan Bayne comes out, and she looks like a goddamn superstar. I think it's a real interesting addition. If she's going to be here for a few months, I think that makes a ton of sense. She has an unbelievable character. I really like what she can do in Stardom. And she came out and felt like a big deal immediately. So I really enjoyed that. Statlander and Willow smiling at each other and then doing the rivalry thing. Fucking hated that. That was one of the best feuds of 2024 last year. They absolutely ruined it with Statlander turning babyface immediately. And now, oh, hey, we're smiling. Yeah, I know. I basically did everything but tase you when we had our feud. But you know what? Smiling away now. And just pretending that this whole actually good storyline thing didn't happen bugged me. Toni Storm eventually gets the win. Now, I mistakenly thought that there was a thing where Toni Storm is doing this rookie thing, and so she's like, oh no, I don't deserve this opportunity. I'm not gonna go for that. And so I didn't pick her in the, oh well, maybe you can have something unique set up here. It makes all the sense in the world. That the second she was in, it was like, okay, well, this makes sense. She has to win. It's going to be in Australia, and I think you can kind of, that story is there, right? And now building it up to Australia, I am so interested to see where this goes. And now again, I think you have a few people coming out of this one feeling like a little bit bigger deals than they did coming in. Off to the main event. It is Jon Moxley taking on Powerhouse Hobbs for the title. This was good. The crowd got behind Hobbs at times, which is tough because Mox is from Cincinnati. But the crowd made Hobbs feel like kind of a big deal. And then Moxley ends up getting the win after a couple times where it's like, okay, this is where Hobbs is going to go down. It made Hobbs feel big. And so again, the overall point, I thought, of this particular episode of Dynamite was to make Hobbs and Cage feel like they can be main eventers. And I think you accomplished that with both of them, quite frankly. Seems like they're taking Hobbs out for a little bit. They do the chair on the leg thing and then the stompy stomp. And so out he goes, which sucks because Hobbs kind of just came back. So it's been very stop and start with him. I would like to see a more consistent presence with him going forward here. But the overall path is Moxley against Copeland, and so that was Cope comes out after and runs him off. It was too late, but that is kind of the overall build there. Overall, this was a good show. Also, I forgot to mention before the Christian Hook thing. Good match, and then Samoa Joe comes out and kind of continues that feud. It was good. The one thing about AEW that we are getting in a few too many disqualification. This is a huge pay-per-view level match, and it's a disqualification. And now you gotta go to the pay-per-view to watch it. Like, we're having Swerve against Ricochet coming up in a bit. That needs to be a clean finish, and then it motivates someone into a pay-per-view rematch. It's kind of a formula they've done before to varying degrees of success, but I'm getting a little tired of big match disqualification. When AEW started, that was supposed to be the thing that they got away from. And so the fact that they're kind of falling into that trap now really does suck. And is a little bit frustrating. But overall, I thought this was a good edition of Dynamite. And it shows, I think it shows that they're learning some of the lessons that they need to be learning as they continue to build up. Speaking of learning lessons, did WWE learn any from last week's boring-ass SmackDown? Let's talk about it. It is WWE Smackdown tonight as the Blue brand continues its 3-hour era. Last week, that sucked. So this week, what do we need to see? Well, any kind of pacing at all needs to be, I think, a very big part of this particular program. It dragged last week in a very significant way and really made it feel like a very dull, boring show. So this week, there needs to be a little bit more zip and a little bit more pace to it. And I think we need to see a few more performers actually on this show and actually being able to showcase their stuff. We don't need tag team matches that we don't care about for 2-3 segments. We don't need that. I'm interested to see the advancement now of the LA Knight, Bloodline battle and this feud. I'm very interested to see the build for that. We are 8 days away from Saturday night's main event. I think Cody and KO are probably going to have one banger of a segment here to kind of get us ready for that. The tag team number one contenders, we're going to have something along those lines. DIY did show up on NXT this week, and so I'm wondering if there's some kind of a Fraxium involvement going on there. So I'll be interested to see if something comes along with that. But overall, I just need to see a better pace to this show. I just needed to feel a bit more important. I didn't look before we came on because it's, everything was going down with the UFC stuff, so I didn't get a chance to see what do they have planned. Tiffany Stratton defending her title against Bayley. That should be a fun match. Quite looking forward to it, actually. Tiffany probably gets the win there. I would imagine it really felt like Bayley was a bit more over on the Raw side, so we'll see what goes down there. Bianca Belair and Naomi take on Nia Jax and Candice LeRae. That probably won't help with the pacing part of things at all, but interested to see if we continue to get that bit of a tease of dissension with Bianca and Naomi. Solo returns. Again, that's probably where the LA Knight feud is going to continue. And then Motor City Machine Guns against Los Garza. That match will be fun, but we need to get some story involved in that going forward. So overall, just need this show to be interesting this week. That's what we are looking for.